Okay, we are live again. Our next talk is an English one, but very important. You see, it's about using ChatGPT, enhancing academic writing, and our guest is remote in Mannheim. Yeah, Marc is chair of the Social Data Science Group and professor of political science and data science. And it's very great to have you here on the stage in Graz. Yeah, and it's your floor. Yeah, the sound is perfect. Yeah, let's go.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ona. Thank you for the kind words and the kind introduction. And thank you for allowing me to participate in such a fascinating conference remotely. To begin, my name is Marc Ratkovic. I hold the chair of social data science in the departments of political science and data science at the University of Mannheim. And this project is going to start out being about GPT and then finish up being about people. And I don't want us to lose track of that because I sort of am developing that as a theme for this project itself. The title itself is Harnessing GPT for Enhanced Academic Writing, Evidence from a Field Experiment with Early Career Researchers in the Social Sciences. So this is joint work with a fellow chair, Thomas Gschwend, a grad student, PhD student, Leo Vendering, and then a series of additional authors, Kevin, Anna Sophia, Oliver, Melanie, and Nicole, who you'll find out were involved in assessing the papers that came out of our conference. So let's just get into this. And we entered this project in a joint collaboration with Springer Nature. I need to thank them for their involvement at every step of this process, because there's interest both in scholarly research and also in the publication world for how GPT is going to change our writing. It changes how we email, it changes our coding, and this is going to be a talk focused on how we can make sure that we use it as a complement for human knowledge and not a substitute. So is it possible, we can all find examples where GPT did not create great work? Is it possible to use large language models and generative text models in a way that can enhance and speed up the creation of high quality knowledge in the academy? That's the question for today. So there have been several studies on using AI to improve performance across general settings. It helped people code better at Microsoft. Boston Consulting showed that it worked in tasks that they do regularly. Marketing copy, generating legal briefs is a mixed bag, but there's a number of cases where at the very least it speeds people up, and in some dimensions it helped. This is called a jagged frontier in some of the earlier studies. The question we want to ask is, but in what sense does it help? And more importantly, can we get it to focus in dimensions that will improve academic work? So our focus is going to be, in particular, on experts creating expert knowledge. We're not talking about undergraduates trying to get through the next essay. We're talking about people who are committed to their field and have invested heavily in their own personal growth and development and have a passion for what they're studying and want to share their insights with the world. So there's an intrinsic motivation here and a level of expertise that these models don't always quite have. And we'll talk about that in just a moment, but we're focusing on this particular area. As I mentioned earlier, I do want to thank Springer Nature for their involvement. I'll explain the details in a moment, but this involved a 3-day hackathon where people came in, some had GPT, some didn't, and I'll go through the design in a moment. But Springer Nature was integral in coordinating the event, media outreach, helping to recruit, and they created a special issue of Humanities and Social Science Communications, one of their flagship social science journals, dedicated for people from this event. So we were very, very happy. I've been very happy to work with them. So why study GPT in social science writing? Because Springer Nature has been further ahead in looking in technical writing. And writing a chemistry or physics lab write-up is different than writing a 40-page essay in the social sciences. So this involves complex, nuanced arguments with clear and logical expression. I want to stress that all of the participants and all of us in the social sciences are intensively trained and we're passionate and we try to do non-routine research. So we're not writing up lab reports. And I don't want to make that sound non-routine, it's just that the writing comes at a different pace. In the hard sciences and computer science, you'll see people publishing 5, 10, 20 papers a year. For us, it's more 1 or 2. So we know GPT can boost productivity, but how, where, and why? And we're focusing explicitly on early career researchers, how they are integrating GPT and AI into their writing. And what's going to come out of this is a discussion of how GPT can help us be better scholars and free up room for us to be better people. All right. So, the event itself, before we get into the event, the basic headline findings, and we'll go through the tables in a minute, but the basic headline findings is that we showed that in a single blind experiment, GPT was able to improve the clarity and coherence of manuscripts over a 2.5-day session. This is kind of to be understood. This was kind of expected, and we pre-registered all of this. And the reason we figured it would help with clarity and coherence is these models are very good with taking work and structuring it and generating texts that work and help to formulate our ideas, right? When we're trying to constitute ideas. As well, the academic journals and the social sciences often require 20 to 50-page papers, but the overall structure is pretty well known. So you're not trying to structure like what should be in the next paragraph. The structures are clear. The most important part, I think, is the second result, which is that it maintained originality. So when the folks came in with their research, we found that the human graders saw an increase in clarity and coherence, but no drop in originality. So the research that came in didn't seem to be hurt. We're finding a dimension in which these tools can help. After our human reviewers assessed all the projects, we ran it through an AI tool, and we found that the AI assessments were informative, though not perfect as a peer review tool. This is turning into a consensus in the literature. I've seen a few other papers with similar results, where what this means is that running your academic work through AI is an informative and useful piece of information. It should not be the only thing you do. The comments it gives back aren't the best, but when we rank on a 1 to 5 scale, it more or less tracks with our human expert reviewers. One of the more intriguing parts of this study is throughout the weekend, we asked people to reflect on their writing process through metacognitive writing exercises, and we found a shift in how they reflected on their writing. They shifted in the treatment group that had access to AI, shifted towards more instrumental words and process words and less likely to use temporal words. This assessment was done using Luke for folks familiar with that package, but it was developed by psychologists along a set of predetermined and pre-scored by psychologists um, along predetermined dimensions. I'll get into that in just a moment. But to set up the event itself, I want to talk about some of the challenges of AI posed to the Academy. Is AI generated research any good? There's firm opinion on this, right? Emily Benter says, no, I don't want to overcharacterize. It comes with a lot of caveats and nuance, but there's very smart people who say no, writing is thinking, okay? Relying on AI too much is going to reduce originality. It gets rid of the thinking that you're doing while writing. We're creating more work and it's worse, and we're losing the human element. And this is one part that I really want to talk about. So this could be, AI could be garbage in, garbage out, right? What's worse is if we put on top of this that people are using AI to generate work, and then they send it to journals that use AI to assess work, we end up with this really horrible GPT Ouroboros of a snake eating its own tail. And all of a sudden, everything is just this cycle of AI slop that gets assessed by AI, using AI, going back and forth, and it becomes this closed loop that leads us nowhere. So one of the goals in this project was to find ways to break out of this loop and have it serve. The experiment itself, recruitment was done up until September 2024, started in July. And there were 22 doctoral and postdoctoral researchers from all over the world, centered in Germany near us, about half, but folks came from as far away as Mexico City, Colombia, and Vietnam. So we had a very diverse group of people. And they came over for 2 days, for 2.5 days. On the first day, the first half of the first day, everyone took part in training on GPT. No one had been assigned to treatment or control yet. We had pre-stratified the group, so we knew that one would be in one room and one would be the other, but we didn't say which room was treatment or not until we flipped the coin after the pedagogical component. So everyone was just basically introduced to GPT in different ways for about 2.5 hours, different presentations on how it can help your research. After that, we put people in one of two rooms and set one to treatment and one to control. The treatment group was given GPT free of charge for days and weeks afterwards. And then the control group was not allowed to use GPT, though they were given access after the event. But at the event, they weren't allowed to use GPT. And we just compared the assessments of the writing when they came in before the event to the assessment after. So the writing sessions occurred in 2-hour sessions with half-hour breaks. And I want to stress that this was kind of fun. There was 2 hours of focus, and there was about half an hour of going outside. We did sport. We were kicking around a football, hula hoops, good coffee, good cheese, good bread, good food, brought in ice cream. It was just a fun time. Then these were the writing sessions. From September to November, our human assessors went through and graded the pre-assessment, graded before the experiment and after. So they graded the initial submissions and the follow-up, blind to who was treatment and who was control. Then by January 2025, everyone in the group was allowed to submit to this high-impact journal, Humanities and Social Science Communications. 4 people submitted, 3 were accepted for publication. So that's a very high success rate in the academic world. How were these things evaluated? We gave our evaluators the dimensions used by humanities and social science communications in their instruction to authors. So this was clarity, coherence, originality, analytical depth, literature relevance, and methodological rigor. It was our pre-registered hypothesis that the first 2 would be impacted by AI and the last 4 would not. So that's what we went in and expecting, and luckily that turned out to be the case. Our worry was that folks in the AI would see slippage in the other areas, and that didn't happen. So the first thing to talk about is the human versus AI, the human assessments. Everything was graded on those 6 dimensions using a 5-point Likert scale. The human assessors gave comments that were frankly more informative than the AI comments, but they were more likely, in my point of view, to capture some nuance and rigor and differentiate sort of the surface clarity and deeper depth. The AI assessments, I want to be clear, were pretty good. The human assessments, finding 5 PhDs willing, 5 professors willing to spend a week grading an extra set of papers twice is a tough lift. Whereas getting GPT-4 to do it, it did it on my cluster system in 15 minutes. I was able to generate hundreds of reviews. So there's obviously a trade-off in quality and ease. Heading to the treatment effect estimates, this is a table of estimate, the t statistic, and a multiple hypothesis adjustment p-value. And the columns in red are statistically significant after the analysis. The first row is reported on a Likert scale, so things were on a 1 to 5 scale. Below it is a t-statistic and p-value. And what you'll see is that there was statistically significant improvement between the AI group and the control group in clarity and coherence between the treatment group and the control group. So our AI assessors found that our human assessors found that the AI generated work was more clear and coherent and didn't find effects elsewhere. One interesting point was the dimensions of assessment. So these are the principal components, which are the dimensions of primary variation across the 6 dimensions as recorded by our human assessors. So what dimensions did they look at? Clarity and coherence obviously correlate, and so forth. And what we found was that when our human assessors did their evaluations, they focused primarily in this first dimension of depth of analysis and methodological rigor. This was about 56% of the total variation across different papers that they reviewed. The second dimension that they evaluated along was clarity and coherence, and then the third was the quality of literature review. As a social scientist, this makes sense. When I look at papers, I first want to know, is it a deep analysis and how rigorous is it? And clarity of coherence come in, and the literature review is just less important. So this at least matches with my understanding of the work that we do in the field. An important point is the depth of the literature and the rigor of the analysis more or less remain untouched. The human versus AI assessments, the biggest advantage to the AI assessment was that it was darn near instantaneous. And I can't help but just recommend that you use AI to assess papers before you submit them to publication. It will unerringly find glaring problems and make smart comments. 100%. And I find that through my own work and the works here, especially early stage work, but even when you're polishing work, it just helps. It's a good piece of information. Publishers are talking about using this to help initialize manuscript screening, saving reviewers time. As I want to stress that it's not a replacement, but it's a valid piece of information. The limitations and challenges, there's nothing like an expert in the field taking their time to read through it. That time is valuable, so figuring out how to spend less time from the humans and more on the AI, I would just recommend. GPT changed reflection. We asked the participants to reflect on their writing process using writing prompts. What were some challenges that you had in this last writing session? How does it feel to be writing? Like those sort of questions, metacognitive questions. And we found that the participants were more likely, using a psychological dictionary method, we found that the participants were more likely to talk about process and less likely to talk about temporal organizing, suggesting that AI changes how we reflect on our writing. It changes our internal monologue. I wouldn't say for better or for worse, but we noticed some internal shift in the participants. So the big takeaway is the AI brought this group together and actually freed up time for people to be more human. So finding a way to use AI to help you be more human is really, really the point here. Use it to accentuate your humanity, don't eliminate it. Find ways to have fun. And I want to stress, like, it was fun playing the foosball with people. It was just fun. We hung out, we talked. I'm still in contact with some of the people from the event. It's people reported back that it's very useful as a recursive editor where you give comments, give it back, and you back and forth with these models to help improve your writing. My advice and my stance is don't be scared of it. Embrace it and use it to make yourself better. Lastly, everyone said it's good for coding. It just helps with SQL coding or Python, not at a professional level, but at the level of a lot of the projects that we do. Everyone agreed it was very, very useful tool for task-based, pre-specified task-based, non-professional coding that needed to work well. So when I mentioned accentuating the human element, this is a picture of the organizers from the day. That's me, Karen, Nikki, Vivian, Henning, Leo, Thomas outside at the University of Mannheim. We're all smiling because it was fun. This gave us the chance, and part of it was part of the experiment itself. But the point I want to make is that we had 22 people involved in this experiment, and I needed complete buy-in from everybody. 22 people is not 5,000 people in the treatment and 5,000 in the control at Boston Consulting. We needed to craft the event to get involvement from everybody. I wanted everybody in the AI group focused for 2.5 days. I wanted everybody in the control group focused for 2.5 days. And the questions of incentives were there in terms of the journal, but even day to day, creating ways for people to have fun and realize we were there to support them and get buy-in into the project was a key part of it. And in this AI world, accentuating the human element was absolutely the essential component of making this work. So the takeaway is that if used properly, AI can enhance the structure and the clarity and the coherence of our arguments while also ensuring that we maintain the originality and rigor that we would otherwise bring to the table, it's also hopeful as an instructor that it's possible to focus now on teaching originality and rigor while also teaching, while sort of delegating some of the clarifying and the writing stage to AI and still getting good social science out the back end. So thank you for your time and your attention, and this was such a genuine pleasure.